When you really think about it, our lives are extremely ephemeral. In other words, they are short lasting in the grand scheme of things. Whether you live 50 years or surpass 100 years in this lifetime, relative to the history of time, that number is so nominal, so minuscule, so marginal. And yet we go through life telling ourselves, someday I'm going to do this. Someday I'm going to do that. Someday I'm going to start this positive habit that will have a beneficial impact in my life. Someday I'll go to school and get a degree so that I can make more money, or learn a trade so that I can make more money. Someday I'm going to discover the love of my life and have a family. Someday I'm going to own a home. Someday I'm going to find my dream career. It's the someday crutch that I feel like puts us in a trapped mindset whereby we believe that we have an ad infinitum amount of time, when in reality, our time is limited. Now, I'm not saying the success of our lives is measured by the tangible things that we attain. I believe that success has a much broader definition. I believe that success varies on a person to person basis and encompasses a wide array of factors. So this video isn't to bash, mock, deride, or to praise and adulate different sets of circumstances in lives. Rather, I want to talk about in this video the someday crutch that I just touched on as it relates to my own life. And I want to talk about how fragile our lives truly are throughout this game of life, how fragile our circumstances are. And that's the first thing I want to start with. You see, one of the things that I someday aspire to is to become an attorney. I aspire to someday be the first in my family to graduate college. In the past, I said someday I'm going to be the first in my family to graduate high school, and that happened. That's the case. I did that. But there's still so many more somedays yet to be achieved. Unfortunately, during my junior year of university, I suffered from a 6-month long bipolar manic episode, during which I had intensified amounts of energy. I was incredibly irritable. I lost sleep. In the most extreme sense, I started to experience delusions and hallucinations, which impaired my ability to function as I normally would. And so, with my functions being impaired in that way, a series of consequences readily piled up. I lost relationships, I lost jobs, I lost my education, and it took years to recover from. And prior to this, my life was in a fairly stable condition. I had a great paying job interning as a marketing intern for a chamber of commerce. I held multiple leadership positions in the extracurricular organization I was in, the Kappa Sigma fraternity. And I was doing well academically up until that point. It's when the mania kicked in that everything went on a downward trajectory. It's what was the catalyst for my downfall. But that's not the only time in my life where I've experienced the fragility of life. And I'll just give one more example, and that's during my recovery, certain aspects of my life only moved in a negative direction. And an example of that would be my weight. I weighed 180 pounds for a very limited amount of time, a very brief period of time. I was 180 pounds. As I came out of my manic episode, I started experiencing racing thoughts, felt embarrassed and ashamed about all that had transpired. And under those conditions, I began to put on weight while also taking medications for bipolar, many of which had increased weight gain or increased appetite as listed side effects. And so I accumulated an astronomical amount of pounds over the course of the next few years. I went from 180 pounds to 354 pounds in just a span of approximately 18 months. Now, I've been able to make some progress since then. I've gotten down to about 303 pounds. Just weighed myself today, and I gained another pound over this past week, but overall, I'm moving in the right direction, even though I have these slip-ups here and there. So these are two moments in my life where I allude to this idea of fragility. And these moments are fragile because at one moment I was so stabilized and on a good track in life to graduate school, to have leadership experience that's meaningful that I could talk about to others, to advertise myself as a candidate for esteemed positions in the future. I was making money. All of these things were positive things and indicators of my normal functioning or my stability at that particular moment. And then abruptly out of nowhere, mania starts to kick in. It intensifies, and by the time it finally starts to abate, I've already experienced a myriad of severe consequences, which I delineated earlier. And then in the case of my physical stature, I was 180 pounds. That was a healthy weight for me. And I only got to be in that weight range for less than a year because I was obese before as well. And I started putting those pounds rapidly back on, this time because of the depression of my manic episode and the shame and fear and guilt and doubt about all that had taken place. So that speaks to the fragility of our lives. And I'm sure you could think of examples in your own life. They could be school related, workplace related, mental health related, or physical status related, as I just went through. But now we get to the someday crutch. Someday I'm going to go back to school. Well, I did go back to school. I've earned more credits. I'm closer to my degree. And even though I'm transferring again, I'm still someday going back once more. I'm someday going to use my degree to get a job and improve the financial situation of my mom and myself. But time is not on my side. My mom is not in the greatest of health, and a huge goal of mine is for her to be able to see me graduate college. And so that's a big reason why I'm actually transferring schools, is that this program I'm transferring to will allow me to graduate a year earlier. And I'm kind of just taking into account the very real possibility that my mom may not have as much time as I would like her to, and I would be heartbroken and devastated if she wasn't able to be around to see me graduate college. And so that's why I'm kind of operating and responding to this someday crutch, in the sense of, rather than tagging on a whole extra year and awaiting the possibility that she might not be here, I'm expediting things a little bit to increase the chances that she'll still be around to see that day, which is so important to me. So by shaving a year off my education timeline, getting my bachelor's degree, I could get my degree in front of my mom, and then I can hopefully land a good job and use it as a launch pad to a future career, whether it means going back to school, grad school, law school, or working my way up the chain of command at a particular company. Whatever the case may be, there's going to be lots of options available. My main point that I want to drive home in this video is, oftentimes we can devise ways to kind of fight back against that someday crutch. I just gave an example about how I'm doing so with school, but you can do so. This is applicable to really any area of your life. You could look at physical shape and say, someday I'm going to get myself in shape. Or you can say, you know what, over the course of this next year, I'm going to set the goal of losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, and I'm going to be 100 pounds lighter. 1 year from now, or 50 to 100 pounds lighter a year from now. And then you can proactively take steps to do that. And in doing so, you're fighting against that someday crutch. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you found this video helpful. I just wanted to share a little bit of my thoughts on the idea of how quickly things can change and what we need to do as a result of that reality. Appreciate each and every one of you. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button so that more people can see it. My name is Tyler Adolfo. Love, light, and tranquility to all.